Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining. If you haven't, please consider liking and subscribing if you are enjoying this content, and obviously leave comments down below. So, something that's been occupying a lot of my mind lately is disliking or hating where you live. So that's twofold, I guess, or it could be manyfold, but definitely twofold in the sense, in my experience, the place itself, your actual physical space, and disliking that space. And the other, I think, largely main way you can dislike where you live is the geographical area of where you live. And I guess you could expand that. That could be twofold. It could be your neighborhood, or it could be the larger community you live in. So these days, where I find myself is the physical space I live in. It's not that it's bad. It's not bad. It's actually a very nice home, and I enjoy it to the point that I can enjoy you can enjoy physical space, but I don't feel like it's my own. It is the as they call it in court, the matrimonial home that my ex and I purchased together. I put down the down payment, and I largely made the payments, and her mother contributed some money to the renovation, because at that point I had gone through so much of my savings due to my second wife that my resources were largely depleted. But at any rate, the physical space itself, it's nice, but it does not feel like my own. It's not a space that, if left to my own devices, I would not have purchased it. It's too large. First of all, it's probably doubly as large as what I need. And I think most people can get by, unless you have a large family, can get by in a space that's 1,200, 1,400 square feet. If you're a small family, I think that's plenty. I don't think people need 3,500 or 3,600 square foot homes. That's not how big my home is, but even at around 2,000 square feet, it's still somewhere between 1,800 and 2,100. I think it's still pretty large for even a small family, but certainly it's way too large for an individual. And so I'm finding myself these days getting rid of a lot of the stuff that she had kind of cast away and did not want, which I don't want. And certainly a lot of things that I had, which I don't actually have a lot of things, but some of the things that I had that I certainly don't need or want anymore. I'm actually a minimalist and have been for the greater part of my adult life. And I don't know if that was a reaction to the fact that some of the folks in my family kind of tended to be hoarders. Not bad hoarders, not like the TV show where, you can't walk. And I actually have experienced that in my professional career, going to places, hoarders' places, and having, to clean those out. But not like that, but just people who had too much stuff and materialism. And I'm not like that. I'm a minimalist person, to the point where it actually harms me, because oftentimes I don't have a lot of tools. I like to do things on my own, but oftentimes you find that in order to be handy or to be a do-it-yourselfer, you have to have the tools, and that's an expense. And particularly today, there was a time where you could go, whether it was to Sears or True Value or Ace, and you could get high-quality tools. Even some of the big box stores, you could get high-quality tools that were made in the USA or made in Japan or made in Germany, And it didn't cost you a small fortune. Certainly, it paid a little bit more for the quality, but and if you wanted inferior stuff, you settled for what at the time was made in Taiwan largely. The Republic of China, as it was once known. So you settled for that. But now, largely, the tool manufacturers that made stuff in Germany, America, and Japan have all but kind of disappeared from most shelves. And when you can't find it, it is prohibitively expensive unless you are someone who actually brings in pretty good income, or you're a professional and you can write those costs off, which I am neither of those two categories. So for me, I kind of make do with whatever I can, and I supplement it where I have to. I try to buy quality stuff, but if I have to, I'll just buy something cheap. And but those kind of cheap tools can either, number one, destroy whatever you're working on, or number two, hurt you. So, but at any rate, getting back to my original topic. So the space does not suit me. It's largely empty, and you can probably tell, even though I use a microphone, that there is a bit of an echo because I am largely in an empty space. And at some point in the not too distant future, I'm going to have to move. It's just pure economics. And while I'm not looking forward to moving, I do look forward to hopefully not being homeless, A, and B, having a space that is much more suited to my actual lifestyle, which is minimalist, which is kind of, more of a economical way of living. I mean, just heating and cooling this place costs me a small fortune. I mean, the utility bills here, and I don't live in a part of the country that has very high utility costs anyway. But it's in the winter. My place is insulated. It's got new windows. It's got it's got a lot going for it. But it's still a big space, and it relies on from heating one end of the house to the other. It's been pretty cost prohibitive, and cooling as well. Because as I probably have mentioned, but in the past, I live in the South, so it gets hot here, and usually it's usually well before what people in the northern part of the country consider summer. Usually the heat starts in May and lasts sometimes until well into November. And you can have really hot days even in December here. So while the thought of that is great, that gets me to the second part of the equation, not just the physical space, but also your neighborhood and the geographic area. I live in a good neighborhood, and I'm fortunate to live in a good neighborhood, and I appreciate that, and I thank God I live in a good neighborhood, because I am surrounded by a lot of neighborhoods that are, quite frankly, questionable. And that, I guess, gets to the larger, the bigger picture, which is the geographic area, moving from the specific to the general, as opposed to doing it the other way around. The geographic area I live in has got a lot of pluses. As I said, lower utility costs overall. It's got, it's not the boondocks, although it is in the country. I don't live, it's not miles and miles and miles to the grocery store. It's not miles to the pharmacy. It's not miles to the bank, to to be honest with you, can't remember the last time I actually took a trip to the bank. But if you needed cash and you needed to go to an ATM machine or something, I don't know. I don't know too many people who aren't baby boomers who go to the bank or the post office for that matter. I was applying for a job recently and I had to go to the post office because the place I was applying to did not have electric means to submit your application. You actually had to fill it out, which I did. I downloaded it and did it as a fillable PDF, but which they didn't have. Theirs was just a standard PDF form, but I did it as a form and I printed it out and sent it back to them, which is what they wanted. That was the first time I'd been in a post office in probably, honest to God, maybe 5 years. So I just, and I actually didn't need to be there. I put, with forever stamps, which I think is one of the best things the post office has ever actually devised. And, there was a lot to like about the post office. Post office is probably a good topic for another video, but they have they being Congress and the U.S. government, has systematically destroyed the post office, and they've done it on purpose. They use it as a punching bag where it's unnecessarily so. And I honestly feel for the people who work for the post office, both current and retirees. And I would just say that it never had to be that way. And I'm sorry that it is, but so I went in the post office. I had put a couple of stamps on there, forever stamps, and it was well within the weight, but I just wanted to double check. As it is, just off the record, or as an aside, I guess, I never did hear from that employer, not even a courtesy. And I did have the wherewithal to email them as well and say, hey, listen, I know that this is the process that you want. I mailed everything. I posted everything. But just so you know it's coming, and I introduced myself and actually got a referral from a friend of mine who works for this particular employer or does work for them as a contractor, and happened to mention his name. And so I never heard back either from my email or from submitting the materials. I guess that's a good thing. And like I said, that's a topic for a different video about the employers and the lack of courtesy or following a protocol or procedure, which I think is, I actually have experience with this, having been an employer, and I never leave people in the lurch as to what the outcome of the process is, and let people know exactly what's going on, whether they're being considered, not considered, finalists, whatever the case may be. Anyway, so I went to the post office, and it's quite shocking these days to go to the post office, but that's another story. So the community I live in short, has a lot of negatives, so many negatives. It is, while it's not distant from major metropolitan areas, I use that plural because that is actually the case, it's not within a proximity that makes that an easy drive. Were it, the property values are such that I could not afford to live there, at least with my former employer. But all of the advantages that go along with that, having first-rate medical care and so on and so forth, it's kind of a long drive. It's about an hour's drive, which is a hassle. If you need anything beyond basics, again, you have to go to this major metropolitan area. It's about an hour's drive to anything that's out of the ordinary, anything beyond your grocery stores, your run-of-the-mill banks, your Targets, your Walmarts, anything beyond that, maybe a handful of dealers, it's kind of a drive. If you have any kind of specialty vehicle, and by specialty, I don't even mean high-end, I mean anything that's not a Ford, Chevy, Toyota, or Honda, or Korean manufacturers, you have to drive into, if it's a Lexus, if it's an Acura, if it's, whatever, or an Audi or VW product, you have to go to this a major metropolitan area, which is about an hour's drive. So that's a disadvantage. The other big disadvantage is, and I know this is the South, and I've lived in the South for a while. Bugs don't bother me. I'm not one of those people who, which I think is kind of feminine energy, but afraid of insects or afraid of arachnids. I don't really understand that. It's kind of actually irrational to have that fear. But having said that, bugs are a nuisance. They can be a nuisance. This is the South, so we have what everyone calls water bugs, which are really just large roaches. And they're gross. Because roaches are largely gross creatures. There's just no way around that. And, while I don't particularly have an issue with it, they get in the house. I mean, they're going to get in the house. And to be honest with you, I don't spray. A lot of folks around here, because they have an irrational fear of bugs, they spray. And they spray the shit out of everything, which to me is not a healthy situation. I don't think pesticides... It's not that I'm against the occasional use of pesticide or a limited use of pesticide. I'm not one of those people. But I think ingesting or breathing in pesticides over long periods of time, and by long periods of time, I mean decades, I don't think that's healthy for you. It's not natural, and I just don't. Particularly these days where most houses, modern houses, and by modern anything built that's newer than the 80s, are pretty tightly sealed overall. So you kind of, whatever you bring into the house, you're keeping there for a period of time and recirculating it with your HVAC system. So I don't think that's particularly healthy in many ways. Not to mention, these chemicals do lay on surfaces that you may ingest. They don't just stay in one place. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about how chemistry and physics works in our society, or maybe we just choose to ignore it or choose to be ignorant. But so I don't spray. So bugs occasionally, they get in the house. That in and of itself is not a big deal. There's in some parts of the country, they call them no-see-ums. I've always known them as gnats. Some other places have different fly type of names for them. They're basically just that, small flies or gnats. And that's the way I've always known them, is they're a variety of gnat. And these things, you cannot go outside. If the weather is anything but hard, anything beyond the hard frost season, these things just swarm you. They're brutal. They're oppressive. It gets to the point where you can't do anything outside. You can't sit outside. They will attack your nose, your ears, your eyes, and of course they'll land on you and make you super itchy. These are not a biting variety of gnat, which is good, but they're a nuisance. You can't be outside, and they will swarm you. There will literally be dozens, if not hundreds of them on you if you stay out long enough. And should you perspire, you will be inundated with these gnats. So the area I'm living in now it's permeated with these things and makes being outside unbearable. So if it's not the oppressive heat, like being outside as an oven with about 100% humidity, these bugs all but finish it for you. You can't be outside. So there are plenty of people in my neighborhood and some of the surrounding neighborhoods that have lots of lawn furniture outside. They have expensive patios and barbecues. And these folks, on their patios, on their porches, these folks don't spend any time outside. And the reason being is it's either too dang hot, or these bugs are such a nuisance that even if it's not hot, you can't be outside. So, is this a place that I want to be? No. But here's my situation. And at the risk of being overly long with this video, I've been stuck because of this divorce, which has kind of hemmed me in financially and otherwise with getting through the legal process. And all of you guys and gals who have been through family court know what a hassle that is. That's number one. Number two, I also have a kid in school, And, moving is not as easy. But he's particularly, he's at an age where it makes moving more difficult. And then lastly, compounding all this is losing my job, basically in January, and not having a replacement job yet makes it all but impossible to move. So that is all a very long way of saying, how do you deal with living someplace where you're not particularly fond of it or downright hate it? I've lived in other places where the living situation is, I've had similar living situations. I didn't like the locale. I've lived up north where it's been oppressively cold, and in communities that have had precious little in terms of economic opportunities. And so it's not just here. It's in a lot of places. And I know a lot of people just kind of make do because you have to, or you have your own reasons. I'd like if people could just let me know where they're at and what that means for you, how you deal with it, how you cope. I know what I tend to do is right now I've been staying inside more, which I hate because I enjoy being outside. But, it makes everything difficult. I mean, can't cut the grass, can't, change the oil on the vehicle. You can't, you can't just sit outside. I mean, it's just crazy. But how do you deal with it? And what other kinds of things do you deal with that make life either unpleasant or miserable in your current situation? I'd love to hear from you all. Thank you for listening. Again, please like and subscribe if you would consider this content something that you want to hear more from. And I will see you all down the road.